guys. I am coming to you live from the shop, very impromptu. So I'm here working today. Today's my day without kiddos where I can catch up on some things. So I'm working on some orders and I thought maybe I'll just do this live and see who is around today. So I have a couple orders to fill for, it's actually for the same thing. So I thought I would show you what I'm gonna make real quick. So this is a nativity sitter is what I'm calling it, because it's not framed, but it does have a wood plank underneath it to help it sit straight up on a mantle. And I have a couple orders for that, so I'm gonna make that today. But I also thought I would show you, so we did some filming today for Channel 3 for downtown businesses. So of course I had to set up a little Christmas display. So here are some of the items that we filmed today. Some of these trays are from last year, and this nativity scene I saw last year and I really wanted to make it. It was on my list of things, but I never got to it. So I made it this year. And you guys probably saw the other night we made that gnome, so I have a couple classes coming up, private classes for that. But today I'm just gonna fill this order and you guys can watch along with me, since I have no kids and I don't have to do school today. So if you're at home and you have nothing to do, you can watch with me. So I've got two that I need to do. So I'm kind of started one, and I'm gonna put you guys up high and let you see what I am creating here. See how that's gonna work for you. So I have two that I'm doing right now. Make sure you can see okay. So I primed one and I've got a second coat on it. And both of these orders are navy, so we're gonna do the other one exactly the same. Got navy paint all over me already. So what I have is a common board that is 6 inches wide and about 26 inches long, and a stencil. So this is online on the website that you can order as a kit, so you can come back and watch this video if you want to make it at home. Follow along with me. So what I'm going to do is move this one I painted out of the way. And I've got a couple blocks of wood here just to prop my board up so I don't paint it to the table. And I'm going to give it some navy paint. So this wood has been sanded already with the mouse sander, but you can also do it with just a plain old piece of sandpaper. You don't have to have a mouse sander. But if you order a kit, it'll come sanded. So we're just going to go ahead and give this a nice coat of navy. So this design you can do in multiple different colors. So you could do a black background with a white image, or you could do a white background with a red or green or black font to it. It says, "Oh come let us adore him," and it has some stars and things in the sky, so I thought navy would be nice for a background. I'm going to try to, if anybody has any comments, I'm going to try to follow along here on my laptop. Hello. So some people are at home and can watch this with me. Hey Aubrey, how are you? Thanks for tuning in. it's not Halloween yet, but in the retail world, it's already Christmas, so here we go. Working on some Christmas designs on the website, so you can go check out what I have up there. I will likely add more, because I think the kits are going to be pretty popular over Christmas. So I'm painting with the grain of the wood, which means with the lines. And I'm just doing a thin coat of paint because it's going to take more than one coat, and you don't want to go too thick with your first coat, okay? You want to dry between the layers. And quickly, because this is a sitter where you don't have a frame all the way around, we're going to do all the edges too, and then eventually I'm going to come back and paint the back. Navy as well. So what I like about this design, as I'm flicking paint all over the floor, is that it can be double-sided, and I think if you know me by now, you know that I like to do stuff that's double-sided. So I was thinking that this one would be really cute. You know, for Christmas you have it turned one way, and then after Christmas you can spin it around, and maybe have something that works for the remainder of the year, like if you have a mantle. This is about the size of the home sign, and you could put a nice wreath, like a basic green wreath for the O, and it would be really pretty decor all year round. You do need a new project. Aubrey, it's been a while, hasn't it? I'm kind of ready to move on to Christmas, so I know about you. I'm ready to put Halloween away. Okay, so that is just one coat, and as it dries, it's gonna show me a lot of the wood grain, and I want it to be super solid. So I'm gonna switch to this other piece of wood and let this one dry. This one has two coats, but there's a couple places that the wood grain is showing through that I just didn't get enough paint on. So I'm going to add a little bit more to those areas so it looks even. Okay, it wasn't too bad. So just those areas. I will probably come back and hit the edges again later. And I'm really just worried about the face of this for right now. So what I'm going to do is show you guys quickly how to weed vinyl. This one is one that I just did, but I'm going to bring the camera down and weed this other one for you so you can kind of see the process. And then we'll stain our wood while the rest of it is drying. I can get you guys to where you can see this. Oh, one doesn't quite like being down that far. Okay, I think that's pretty good. So when you get a kit, it's already weeded for you, but if you want to weed it yourself, you can definitely let me know that, and I'll send it to you. So you can do it yourself, but I'm just using a hat pin. There's fancy tools out there. You don't really necessarily need fancy tools. If you have a pen, that's all you need. So I'm going to start with the letters, and these are pretty thin letters, so I'm just going to kind of pick at it to get it started and then peel it with my fingers. And I'm going to use the tip of my pen to hold down any of those little in-betweens, like the inside of the O here. I'm going to hold it down and I'm going to peel past it like that so it stays. And then any of this stuff that we peel out, it's going to go in the trash. So you can just make a little pile. And I'm going to use the tip of my pen to kind of break through. And again, I'm going to hold the pen down on the center of the E and just peel past it very carefully because this one's got little letters. So if those little pieces move on you, it's not a big deal. See, that one's kind of crooked now. I'm just going to take my pen and push it back where it goes. You probably noticed things have been kind of quiet here at the shop with COVID and homeschooling, so I just wanted you guys to know I'm still around, taking orders for Christmas and doing small private classes right now. Usually my minimum is about 8, but we're down to 6 right now or less as a class. Just so that we can distance and keep it between people who know each other and families and all that. So there are a couple stars in the sky here. And the top of the eye, can't miss that one. Our little animals. And wise men. I have a lot of navy in my house, so this would be a really great accent in Christmas time. And when I painted this first one that I did, I used a little bit of metallic on the metallic silver on the words and the stars. It's pretty subtle, but it's pretty in person. I don't know if this guys will help you figure out how to weed stuff or not, but it's fun to watch, I'm sure. Kind of reveal the picture as we go. And this material is film, so it will stretch and tear, so you can easily stretch it and tear it. So you want to pull gently. Can't hardly see, but there are a couple more stars here. So I think that is all of it. So not terribly difficult, just need to be really careful with the small letters. And then I'm going to show you how to put the cover sheet on. Okay, so here's my trusty shelf liner. So what I want to do is cut a piece of shelf liner to match the shape of this stencil. Well, it's obviously not long enough this way, but that's okay. We can piece it together to make it fit. So I'm going to go this way with it just to show you that instead of going the other direction. And this does not have to be a straight cut, as long as it covers the white. The white lettering is all that needs to be covered. You don't have to worry about all this blue. If it's a little short, it's not going to matter. So I'm going to take an end and get it started there. And I'm going to peel it back about an inch and then fold it. And I'm going to take my end here, so you can see. I'm going to lay it sticky side down. Get it started. And then I'm going to pull from underneath while I smooth across the front. And that will give you a pretty smooth application of that cover sheet. And I'm just checking to make sure that I've covered all of the white, and it is all covered. I'm going to cut one more piece. Actually, I've got a scrap I can use. Got this little scrap piece that will just about cover it. And I'm just going to make sure that I overlap that other piece by just a little bit. And pull it down. And then I have a little bit of donkey butt that needs covered there. It's cutting it off, so I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to take some of this excess from the top. Cut it off. And I'm going to use it on my ass right there. Okay, so all of my white is now covered. Okay, so I'm going to use a sharp edge, and what I typically use, because it's always handy, is a paint tray. I'm just going to give it a rub. I'm not trying to work out bubbles or creases. I'm just giving it a good stick. You know, I've got a bubble right there. I don't know if you can see it, but it's not going to make a difference. So you can try to work it out. It might work out for you. If not, just give it a good rub. Got a bubble over top of that O. Okay. So that is ready to go. So I think next I'm going to do is stain the base real quick. So I will put this here. So for the center, you're going to get a sanded piece of wood. That's for your base. And what we're going to do is stain this a real pretty brown. So I've got this 1 hour stain that was tinted to a nutmeg, and it's a nice, really rich brown. So I'm going to use baby wipes to put this stain on. And I like it because it's water-based. But the tricky thing is some of these water-based stains don't all react the same to stencils. So since we're not putting a stencil on this one, we're just using it for the base, it's fine. We don't have to worry about it. And it says it's a 1 hour dry, but it will dry faster. So I'm just dipping in the can there and taking a baby wipe and wiping all this on. And blending it as I go with the grain of the wood. And because it's the base, you've got to do the sides. And the edges, so it looks finished. And work it down into any little crevices that I have on the wood. A little rough spot right there. I'm just going to kind of work it in there. And blend as you go. This stuff does wash off your hands too, so soap and water, easy cleanup. If you are going to put a stencil on a 1 hour stain, I would recommend letting it dry more than an hour. If you have time to let it sit overnight, do that. Brown tends to work fine with stencils. The one that seems to give me the most trouble is gray. The gray 1 hour stain, for some reason, does not like a stencil. And I'm just going to flip it over and do the back real quick. So the kit for this, if your house doesn't have wood grain tones like browns and stuff, you can pick a gray stain for this project. That would look pretty with the navy as well. Check my edges. I'm looking for like where it kind of dripped over the edge. I want to make sure I blend all that in so I don't have any really dark spots or drips. Okay, so that looks pretty good. It's pretty easy. Baby wipes are great, multi-purpose tool. And I'm gonna just grab one and clean my hands off a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to set this to the side, and when you get this, you're going to notice that there's going to be 4 little pre-drilled starter holes for your nails, and then this will end up getting nailed onto the bottom of the actual project. Okay, I'm going to come back to our wood. So my paint has had time to dry. I'm going to give it just a minute or 2 of cool air just to make sure I've got a knot. And right in the knot, that paint doesn't dry as fast. So I'm just going to dry it for a sec. And the reason I'm using cool air on my hair dryer is because this is pine. And so pine has sap. And if you use heat, then you're going to pull that sap up to the surface, and that's not great. So I'm just going to go cool air. So I get a lot of questions about, and I think I'm going to turn that knot to the bottom here. Get a lot of questions about why my stencil peeled the paint. When I peeled it off, my stencil peeled the paint. Well, there's a couple of things that could cause that, and it seems to me the most common is paint dry time. People are not able to wait and be patient and dry their paint. So if you have layers of wet paint and damp wood, then this is going to just peel that paint off. So you want to make sure you're dry. So if you get a stencil from me, you need to lay it face down on the wood. This is really important. People always do this part wrong. So make sure that when you're doing this, you are paying attention to this part. Face down, and then separate the white backing from the blue stencil and hold it down with one hand, and then gently peel your backing with the other. You want to kind of roll it, because you have to be very careful about your small letters and all those tiny little in-between pieces, especially on this font that's so small. So here you can see my L, or my, oh, it's my L, yeah. So this little part of my stencil is wanting to come up, so I'm going to roll the paper back and gently push it down. And that's going to place that little piece of the L right where it was supposed to be. And there's another one. I'm just going to roll it back and press it down. There's a tiny little piece right there. I'm just going to roll it back, press it down. I'm just going to put it right where it was supposed to go. If you're doing this slowly, you can catch these as you go. If you're ripping it off fast, you're going to lose pieces of your letters. And it's hard to find them and put them back in the right place once you get to this stage. So just be super careful and gentle. So now I have my stencil ready to put on the wood. And it's see-through now, and if you can kind of tell, but I can see through this, which helps me place it on the wood. Even though it's navy, it's probably gonna be hard to see on the camera. But I'm gently placing it on the wood. I'm not sticking it down right away. I'm just kind of eyeballing it where I want it. And I've got this big old knot here at the bottom that I'm gonna try to work around. Kind of put it towards the middle of my Mary, and I'm checking the edges of my donkey and my camel to make sure they're almost the same distance from the edge, and then kind of eyeballing that this is straight. Oops, straight. So of course I get it where I want it, and then I pull it out of the way. So one more time. I'm gonna eyeball it, and then I'm gonna work from the center out. So now I'm committed to where it's at on the wood, and I'm going to really rub it onto the wood by using my straight edge again. I'm sorry if I'm rocking the camera here. So as I'm rubbing this, it's changing to a little bit darker blue. And that kind of indicates to me that it has adhered to the wood and you have a good seal. But you don't want it to bleed. And this cover sheet of clear contact paper allows us to be pretty rough here and really rub it down without tearing our stencil. Okay, so I think that's pretty well stuck onto the wood. It's all dark blue. And now I'm going to gently peel off this contact paper, and it's going to kind of reveal my stencil that I'm actually going to paint. So I'm going to grab the edge and I'm just going to roll it back. And again, this is a step that you just don't want to rush. If you have multiple pieces that you piece together, you're going to have to do them individually here. And if you have areas that kind of pull up, you're just going to push them down with your finger as you go. This is where, if you have a stain that does not like stencils, this is the hard part, is getting this cover sheet off without your stencil coming off the wood. So it's really about patience in that case. I'm just going to kind of fold this upon itself so that I'm not all sticky here. So if you were doing this in a white background, you would get a little stain blocker paint called Kills. And that would be your first layer to kind of block out any stains or knots in the wood. And it will prevent your piece from turning, over the years, turning brown. Okay, so my contact paper is off. And so the next step is to add a layer of Mod Podge. And you would get that in your kit. It's a very thin layer and it just seals the stencil to the wood. So if you have any areas that it just doesn't want to stick good for you, it's going to help stick it down. And then in particular, I have this huge knot and I want to make sure that my edges are sealed just as good as possible so I get a straight edge while I work around this little divot. I'm just going to dip right out of the jar here. It's the luxury of being the only one here. So I'm going to go super thin, especially on these thin letters. You don't want to glob it up. You want to leave some room for your paint in there. So I'm going to spread it out really thin, like to where it's translucent, okay? And it's going to dry super fast. And you'll be ready to paint in no time. But this really kind of helps fill in those little hairline grain lines that even though you think your wood is nice and sanded and flat, it does still have those grain lines that the paint can travel underneath your stencil. Okay, Tara. Getting in a quick live. Well, I have no kids, Tara. Grandma is helping with remote learning today. It has been a long week with the weather, for sure, being at home. I'm making sure to hit my little stars and get the base of my wise men. I'm not going off the stencil though. I'm trying to stay on the stencil, even though this dries clear. And I'm going to work it into those little divots here on this knot. This is the part that's super boring to watch. Okay, I think I've got everything covered there. I'm going to make sure I put this brush right into water because it will get hard and crusty and be a complete waste. Side. I'm going to give this a quick cool air dry. Now that the stencil is on the wood, we have to use cold air only because it is a glue backed stencil and we don't want to melt the glue or melt the stencil. So if you don't have Mod Podge and you're working on a project at home, you can, if you have a solid background, use that same color of paint as your sealer. Just like I did the Mod Podge, you could use navy paint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself a little extra room here with some painter's tape to cover up this bottom of this stencil. That way I don't accidentally get it on the navy. A little extra cushion, if you will. Just save me a little touch-up later. And I'm going to grab some white paint. We are ready to actually paint. And I'm going to choose like a medium-sized brush just for quickness, because this will need a couple coats. So I'm going to do thin coats of white paint. And this first coat, I really want to make sure that I'm hitting all the edges. So I'm kind of going this direction, and then I'm going to go this direction with it to make sure that all those thin little lines are covered. A lot of times you kind of lose the stencil design after a couple coats of paint. So I want to make sure that the very first coat I'm getting all of the edges I need to get while I can still see it really well. And just like I did the Mod Podge, I'm spreading it out so it's very thin. That will dry faster in between layers. Tara, I have hardly any time to make anything anymore, so I took advantage of it. Hang on, guys. Okay, a little technical delay. My laptop ran out of juice. There we go. But yes, Tara, you are like me. I could spend my whole day creating. I wish I could. Maybe one day. Be back to that. This design, the Wiseman, the little crowns are so tiny little pointed, so you have to make sure that you go back and forth both directions to make sure you get the paint in those little points. And try to fill in this knot a little bit with paint just to disguise it a little bit. And so for the metallic paint, I'm going to do it as a last and final layer of paint. After the white is dried, it's going to be my primer, so to speak, for the metallic. So I don't have to do multiple layers of the metallic silver. It's expensive paint and it takes multiple layers to get the full effect. So I'm going to go white underneath. I want to make sure I'm not going off the stencil here on the edges. So this is a first thin coat, and I'm going to put a little cool air on it to dry. Mist a star. And I'm going to continue to build on this thin layers and dry with the cool setting in between. So hopefully 3, maybe 4 coats will be good. Hey Lisa, so the kits are on the website. I believe with the cedar wood, this one is listed for $40. It is 26 inches wide. You would order it online. I usually have about a 5-day window to fill your order, and then I would contact you for pickup, and you would pick it up here at the shop, or if you're local to Hutchinson, you can opt to have it delivered to your porch. So because I did that so thin, it dries very fast, so we can quickly do our second coat. Don't have to be quite as careful this time, and I'm just going to pick one stroke and stick with it. So I'm going to go back and forth instead of both directions this time. I'm just going to go this direction with the grain. Still going thin and even. So Lisa, what you'd need to have at home is paintbrushes and a hammer for this project in particular. Some baby wipes for your stain. You could also use an old t-shirt or paper towels if you absolutely needed to, kind of on the cheap. Everything else is provided for you in the kit. There's my second coat of thin white. I'm gonna cool dry this again. So when you dry in between coats like this, you do thin coats and you dry in between, that helps your next layer cover better. For one, you're not piling wet on top of wet. Because when you do that, you'll notice that your paintbrush takes the paint off versus adding an actual second or third layer. So drying in between is critical, and that's why we do thin layers. And also, if your paint is super thick and gloppy, it's not going to get dried all the way through. So when you do go to pull off your stencil, it's going to be like stretchy, gooey paint. And that's where it can pull just right off your board. So it is kind of a method to my madness here with the thin layers and doing it multiple times. Trying not to miss those tiny stars. Still sticking with using the same direction. That way, hopefully my paint is all going on evenly at the same rate. As you dry it, you're gonna see that the wood's gonna absorb, even though we have the navy base. The wood's gonna absorb and the navy's gonna show through, and that's why we're doing multiple layers. So as you dry, you kind of have to assess and say, okay, do I think I need another layer? White on top of a dark color, you always have to do a lot of layers. So doing them in this process where it's thin and you're drying it in between is the recipe for having it pull cleanly in the end. And the other thing is working in the right environment. So this is a question I get all the time. People are not successful and they wonder why. Well, a lot of times they're working in environments that are humid, too hot, too cold, and it affects the paint and how it dries. So if you're not giving it enough dry time and you're, say, working in your garage, not that we have to worry about humid weather anymore, but in the summertime, that's definitely a factor in the final result of your project. Okay, that's coat number 3. Okay, so I'm going to grab my metallic for my lettering. Gold or silver would be pretty, or a mix of the two if you like mixing those colors. I'm just going to go with the metallic silver. And it really does, I don't know if you can even see the difference on here. It's very, very light, so it does almost look white. But I'm going to go ahead and do this top section of lettering in the metallic. And if you want metallic for your project, you can definitely request it on the order. Be careful not to get it on my roof. I'm going to stick with white, I think, for the remainder. But I am going to hit these tiny little stars with the metallic. And this is super subtle, guys. So this is, you'll notice this kind of, you know, it's on your mantle at night when the lighting is dim and you're looking at it from an angle, you're going to see that sheen of the silver. So it's not going to be super bold. You may not even pick it up on the cell phone here with recording this, but it's pretty in person. And I'm going to do this star right here in the middle of the manger too. And I think now that this is dry, then I want to go one more coat of white on the remainder here. So let's quickly do that. I like it bright white. Okay. Cool air dry this layer. Good. Did I what? Yeah. Oh yeah. I should have ordered a beer. So you can definitely tell easily if your project is dry enough. It's pretty distinct. If you start to pull your vinyl and you have a nice crisp edge, then you know it's dry enough. If you get kind of a jagged finish, then your paint is not dry enough. So you just need to kind of sit back and give it some more time. This could probably use a little more time, but it's pulling pretty clean, so I'm just going to go with it here for the sake of time. And I have just this little, you probably can't see that from where you're sitting, but there are tiny little flecks of the navy that have slightly come up, like little wood grain flecks, but that is super easy to fix on a touch-up, so not going to stress about it. And this vinyl is big. It's 26 inches, so I'm going to kind of get to a halfway point and I'm going to trim it down. Just so that it's less crazy to pull off. The areas to be really careful about are the stars, obviously, because they have such tiny points. I'm going to get to another section here and trim it again. If this is showing the mirror image for you guys, so you really can't see the wording. I'll turn it around here in a second when we get it done. And there we go. So now you're left with these tiny little pieces in here that are in the centers of your letters. You're going to go back to your hat pin and just kind of, at a flat angle, pick up those pieces and peel them out. If you accidentally gouge your wood, then you can take a tiny brush. It's good to have kind of a tiny brush, a medium-sized brush, and a large brush if you're investing in some brushes for home or for home. Just so you have something that's small for touch-up. There's no perfect piece. Everything you do will need touch-up here and there, so don't feel like you did it wrong if you have places to touch up, because this one definitely does. But for the most part, it's nice and clean. So you can, depending on your preference, put a nice sealer on this. I actually made this as an auction item for tech. If anybody is planning to do their virtual auction, this will be an item that's coming up for auction. And it has a nice glossy poly sealer on it. But I don't recommend doing that right away. I would let it dry for a while, because you're going to brush that on and you don't want the paint to kind of smear. So even though it's pretty dry, it's not going to be dry enough for the sealer. So just going to touch up a little bit of my silver. I feel like I'm blind today. I need my readers. And just a little touch up of the navy. There's tiny little lines where the paint kind of flecked up a little. Again, super easy touch up. And you may not even be able to see these imperfections. So let me quickly show you how we're going to put the stand on it. Okay, so I'm going to look at this piece of wood and decide what should be the top and what should be the bottom. This is kind of the smoother side, so I'm going to drill my starter holes on the bottom. Oops. Get my drill here. We're going to go right down the middle. This would also be the process if you ordered something with a frame. The frame would come with pre-drilled holes, and then we're just going to use some nails to tap it on. Sorry to keep walking away. I keep forgetting that I didn't bring all my tools to the table here. So, put this out of the way. Just going to tack our. So what I'm going to do is get my nails started. Remember, this is the bottom, the underside of the vase. I'm going to tack them down so that I can see the tip of them. I'm not nailing them into the table, just far enough to where I can see the tip of the nail coming through. And that tip coming through is kind of my guide. It's always easier if you have a helper to help you hold it, but you can manage it by yourself. So what we're going to do is make sure that our tip is in the center and that we are about 2 inches off on each side, and give it a bang into the wood. And then you're going to make sure that this side is on center. Alright, now I'm banging the camera here. And now it has a really nice solid base that it's not going to tip over on your mantle or shelf. And so like I said, I'm going to come back and I'm going to paint the edges again with another coat, and then I'm also going to give the back a solid coat so that at some point I can put like home on the back with a wreath and flip it around for the seasons. But if you're interested in this kit, it is $40 on the website, and you can come back and watch this tutorial at any time and do it along with me and create it at home. So definitely let me know if you have any questions. You can Facebook message me and I'll be glad to help you. Thank you for hanging out with me today. Hope you guys have a great day. See you later.